Okay, welcome everybody to Living Chassidus. We have our life skill series. At Living Chassidus, we not only take care of the Chassidus aspect, and we do a lot of great shirim on different, whether it's sichas or Tanya or all kinds of things, great Farbrengens as well. But we also want to give our members life skills. We want one of our goals is that people should reach a point in their lives and not feel like they have to say, I wish somebody would have told me. So here we are telling you, and we are so excited to have all array of topics from women's health to the one tonight, which we're having in financial education, to um, we're having one later on about hormones. We're having another one next week about sheitelach, how to shop for your sheitel, how to take care of it. We're having another one about hormone health. So we are trying to cover as many topics that are relevant to you as possible, and we are so excited today to have Mrs. Yael Trusch. And first of all, we have a few things in common, Baruch Hashem. But I will give you her introduction. So, Yael is a money coach and the host of an award-winning podcast, Jewish Money Matters, which is also the topic for tonight. Her signature online course, God Wants You to Be Rich, has transformed the lives of countless Jewish women and couples across the globe. And I am so grateful and lucky to say that Yael agreed. She was like, living Chassidus, I want to do this. So now I will pass the baton on to her.
Well,
Thank you, Yael, for being here.
it was an easy yes. I mean, living Chassidus, like, hello, you're talking my language. You know what I mean? So
Love
thank you.
it. Thank
Thank
you.
you for the invite. So thank you, everybody. Welcome. Yeah, I think we're gonna do a little bit of my signature style is pretty profound and also pretty practical. So hopefully we'll strike a balance between the two. And there's a lot that we can say about money. So just to manage expectations, we're not going to be able to cover everything in an hour, but I think we're going to cover enough, hopefully, that that will get you thinking and maybe even changing attitudes, and maybe you realize that you might want to do a few things differently. So thank you. And while I get my presentation here going, which I'm very funny because I'm usually not a presentation type of person. Like I'm a very, and why is it not showing? Why is it not showing here? I'm a very like speak off the cuff kind of person, but sometimes I'm like, okay, but people like are visual and they want to hold on. Hold on, Michal, why am I not seeing my again?
You got it.
I've never had this problem.
Don't worry, it's all good.
Right, let's
We're a
see.
nice, chill
It's
group of ladies.
it's in the meantime, what I wanted to ask you guys, well, I don't know why I can't. So weird. Like, where is it? It's right here. So no, I'm clicking on it. Why is it not showing up? I want to hear from the ladies. Oh, there it is. Beautiful. Tell me in the chat, like, kind of where you're holding. I want to know you're married, you're employed, you don't work. Like, I just to get a little bit of a feel, for my audience. Let me see. Can I see my chat at the same time as I'm sharing my screen? Probably not, but maybe Michal, can you tell me what they say? Or you can tell me a
Yes.
little bit about my crowd. Are we single, married? How are we making money? Oh, see, I can see my chat here.
There you go. You got
Okay,
it.
single, my own business, beautiful single secretary. Okay, okay. Married. Okay, so we have a combination. Work full time, very expensive yeshiva tuitions. I know what you're holding, Goldie. Same here. Working full time. Okay, okay. Very nice. Okay, beautiful, 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 beautiful. Single and between jobs. Nice, nice, nice. Okay, very nice. Okay, so let me just hit that present button. So obviously we're going to talk today about Jewish Money Matters. I'm going to make a little disclaimer here. It's not so little, it's actually quite important, that anything that we're going to discuss here today is not investment advice. Really, it's all for educational purposes only. And I need to just cover my bases and make sure that that's understood. It's kind of important legally. So who am I? Michal did a beautiful job of introducing me. Some of you know me from the podcast, from Jewish Money Matters podcast. I have an online program for Jewish women called God Wants You to Be Rich. And really what I do, and I teach many things, like Chaya was telling me she listens to my bitachon class every week, but everything I do is really to help you build a joyful, rich life without compromising on your Jewish values. And, even if right now you don't get along with money, that's okay. We can get to a point where we do build that life. And hopefully today will be a little bit of an introduction to that. And people know me for this, like, no nonsense, like step-by-step educational approach, like no intimidating Wall Street jargon. A little bit about me. I am an introvert. People think I'm an extrovert, but really, because I go on stages and, Zoom rooms like this and stages all over the world, but really I'm an introvert and I love hiding with my books in a cozy corner. So that's a little bit about me. The podcast is right here, Jewish Money Matters podcast. You can find it on every podcast app. Chaya just encouraged me to put more of my episodes on YouTube, so maybe I will do that. Michal, I want to ask you one question, and tell me if this is okay. Should we take questions at the end? That was kind of what I was thinking. Or do you want me to stop and take questions throughout? What do you prefer?
I think at the end would be great. And
Okay.
if somebody wants to send one earlier now, if I feel maybe, but I think let's go for the end.
Yeah, maybe collect them, and then maybe at the end, you'll kind of spot me with the questions. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah,
Okay.
sounds good.
So Jewish Money Matters. Okay. So let's start with why does it matter? Like, why is this so important? Why is it even a thing? Why are we talking about it? And I think we need to give everything a little bit of context and really understand that that Judaism has a very unique way of illuminating life in this physical world, and financial life is no exception. And unfortunately, throughout this dark exile, Michal, you can see me because I can't see you guys, and it's so weird. That's why I don't like presentations. And I'm wondering how I could see you and present at the same time.
Yeah, you might be able to put everybody on the screen above.
Let me see.
I think there's a view.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you see us?
I see it. I see you.
Yeah.
At least I see you. Okay. But
Guys,
you
if you
see
turn
me.
on your screen, you will not show up on the recording. So if you want to turn on your screen and hang out with Yael, even though you will not show up on the recording.
Oh, that's great. But at least everybody sees me and they see my screen. So that's good. Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay. So I was saying, exile. Okay. So just like this exile has sort of tainted the way we think about relationships, the way we think about intimacy, the way we think about the way we dress, the way we, do business. So much of how we think and behave in the world, right, has been influenced by views that are not necessarily Jewish views. They're the views of the rest of the world. Well, it's no different with money. And I think it's time for us to come back to what is really the Jewish view of money. And why is it so important is because, let me put it this way, especially because we're in a group of Chassidus. Why is my body so important, for example? Right? Like, we don't believe in rejecting our body, right? We don't believe in rejecting materiality. My body is the house of the soul, is a beautiful resource that God is giving me so that my soul can do what it's supposed to do here. Therefore, I wouldn't even think, and if I do, I have to get help, to reject my body, to not take care of it, right? I know I have to take care of it, right? It's healthy, it's a healthy person knows to be in a relationship with their body that is a healthy relationship, right? I have to feed it. I have to take care of it, right? Same thing with money. Same thing. I'll give you even a little bit of a more dramatic example. And this goes to every resource that God gives us, okay? God gives us the blessing of children, right? I wouldn't say, you know what, let them raise themselves. Let them take care of themselves. No, we know we have to take care of it, right? We have to take care of our children. We have to take care of our body. Same thing with money, guys. Money is a blessing that God gives us, and we have to do what's responsible with it and take care of it. And in fact, just now, this whole time period that we're in, we're coming into Pesach. We're now building the Mishkan in Chumash. It gives us so much insight. If you think about it, the Torah has never been squeamish or like icky about money. On the contrary, I mean, the patriarchs were extremely wealthy. We went into Egypt with a promise of wealth. We left Mitzrayim with a tremendous amount of wealth. We got wealth, even more wealth at the splitting of the sea. And what was all that wealth for? To build the house of God in this world. And what are we doing till today if it's not that, right? We're doing that. We continue to do that. And so we have to have that perspective that Judaism doesn't want us to reject this. God wants us to embrace it. God wants us to have a healthy relationship with it because we need it in order to advance our mission in this world. Materiality is very important to fulfill the messianic vision that God has planned for the world. So it happens here. The Mashiach happens in this physical world. Therefore, we need the epitome of materiality is money, right? We need that. We need it to do mitzvahs. We need to do everything. So once we start getting that perspective, it's like a whole game changer, right? It's like, no, this is something really cool and really positive. I hope, I mean, at least it excites me, to look at it like, you know what, when I'm taking care of my money and I'm actually literally serving Hashem. I'm literally fulfilling it. It's part of me fulfilling the mission for which I'm created, bringing Mashiach. So it matters, and it matters a lot. As Jewish people, we shouldn't be taking it lightly. However, if I would ask you guys, and I'm asking you, I want you to put on the chat, how do you normally feel about managing your money? Probably before I gave you the pep talk. Like if you tell me or give me emojis, what would you say? How do you normally feel about, money or managing money? I want to hear something. Having a very hard time. Yeah, exactly. Like, right? Or I would put like a cringe, emoji, like with, right? Exactly. So very often we really feel it's very uncomfortable and we're scared, right? A lot of feelings. So, or we might feel like we just want to bury our head in the sand. And many of us do that. And I will admit that I used to be like that. And let's whatever, let somebody else take care of it, and so what could be happening is a few things. Is that we adopted, like I said, this non-Jewish money mindset that kind of makes us feel like, no, it's it's the root of all evil, or it's going to be at the expense of my spirituality, and like stuff that is not really Yiddishkeit. And I'm not going to get too in the weeds of it, but I think you guys get the idea. And if you listen to the podcast, there's been a lot of discussion on this topic extensively. And people like Rabbi Shais Taub have talked about it with me on the podcast, and Y.Y. Jacobson and Simon Jacobson. So we've had a lot of very in-depth episodes on this, on really the real clear, clean, unadulterated Jewish view of money. And maybe in the Q&A, if you have questions, we can get a little bit more into it, okay? There's also the aspect that we'll look at a little bit more in depth today, which is, very often we didn't get an education on how to do this thing, how to do this money thing within the natural world, because obviously we're in this world, so we kind of have like, what are the parameters? What are the rules of the game? Like, what are we supposed to be doing? Yes, Yael is telling me it's important. God wants me to take care of it. God wants me to have it. He's giving it to me. And now what do I do with it? And I have to take care of it, just like I take care of every other blessing that he gives me, right? So we haven't had maybe the education or the management skills to do that. And so we're going to learn a little bit about that today. But the fact that we don't have this and we don't have the proper Jewish perspective maybe leads us to do nothing, and you can tell me in the chat if this is you, to hand the responsibility of your money to someone else kind of blindly. And this happens to be very often leads us in a very not good path. And we think it's comfortable to just hand it over, but really, I think we need to a little bit wake up. I understand the beauty and the responsibility and the beauty in the divine service that it is to be in tune with our money. And especially if we're in a relationship with our husbands, in a relationship where we're married, it takes two. We have to develop that sense of doing this together. It should be team effort. And when we hand over the responsibility of our money to somebody else. And I'm not necessarily referring to our husbands. It might be husbands, it might be a financial planner, a financial professional, without us really understanding what's happening or asking the right questions. Really, it's bound to cause unnecessary stress, when literally we could be so much happier, so much more in the moment, and really calmly looking forward to what's ahead, because we're kind of, we just have a clear path for ourselves. Okay. So when we think about ourselves, as you guys told me, most of us don't really think of ourselves as money managers. It's like, really? No, I just don't know how to do this. And my take is, well, what is it really? What is it to be managing your money? And to me, it's somebody who can actually take the steps to proactively manage their money, that we are at the same time, because this is not meant to be obsessively managing our money, of course, because we're not doing it for the money. Money is never the end. Money is always the means to what? To serve God in this world. That has to be like it has to be like ingrained, in our psyche. Okay. So that means that I'm continuously thanking God for the blessing, for money, and for everything that we have. Okay. That gratitude and that humility and that sense of responsibility has to be constantly present, right? That awareness that it's not really mine. It's a gift that God is giving me so that I do all these wonderful things that I have to do in this world, right? And at the same time, this comes with something really, really important, which is we do all this money management, so to speak, with full reliance on God, that he's taking care of us the same way he's done from beginning to end, right? While I do my work in the world. And that becomes this joyful, amazing money manager that, hopefully we can get. So yes, we can be a money manager. It doesn't have to be scary. We can be involved. And the reason we can be involved is because, bottom line is, yes, your creator assigned you this role. It's by virtue of him giving you money in this world, he's saying you can do this. Okay. It is part of you serving Hashem. Okay. So there's no reason to reject it. We got to be involved. Okay. So it is a privilege. It's a responsibility that God gives us, and we should welcome it with joy and with love, instead of, the dread and the fear and the going like this, right? Again, if God is sending it to us, and he always is, and we can have a whole conversation about, abundant mindset and all that. Maybe, I don't know if we'll have time today, but he always is. It means that we have what it takes to manage it. Okay. All right. So, and here's kind of the punchline to all this. And I think we need to get this piece, and this, I guess, hits at the abundance mindset, is the bottom line. And this, for anyone who's right now struggling, and I feel like most people I know after October 7th, October 7th, there's like a state of constriction on many areas. Like, we all feel squeezed on so many levels. Finance is not being an exception. Like, there's nobody I know, really, even people with very, very high net worth, who are not in a crunch. Okay. There's something going on. Regardless, we have to know that this is all part of developing a relationship with our creator, because at the end of the day, God wants us all to have. He's not stopping the flow of it. He wants us to have, because again, he needs us to have to do. He asked us to do here, like I said before. Okay. So we have to get in our heads like, no, God wants me to have this, and it's okay for me to want to have it, because I have such a clear why that's aligned with my soul's mission. I'm not wanting this for self-serving reasons. I'm really wanting it to serve him. And whenever I'm in that place, God really opens up. Like, think of anything that you've done with a really clear, pure intention of serving God, how the Yam Suf opens for you. And I'm sure, I mean, Michal, I know you're in Shlichus, so I know you've experienced this many, many times, right? So with our finances, it's really no different. God is constantly giving. Those of you who go to my Bitachon class, like, you understand, like, one of the 7 qualities of God is that he's extremely generous to the deserving of the undeserving. Like, literally, the flow doesn't stop. So he wants us to have it. So let's show up, right? Let's show up for that. Like, what do I need to do to show him that I'm going to be this super trustworthy agent of this resource that he has available, that he should say, you know what, she should have it, right? Okay. So that's the goal. So for anybody who wants, this is not opening now, it's opening at the end of the year, but you can get on the wait list for that program. So I put the link there. But disclaimer, it's not opening soon, but you can still get on the wait list if you want. Okay, so now practical. As Jews, how do we allocate our money? Okay, so there's them, there's the world around us, and there's us, okay? The normative personal finance will tell you the following. We save, we invest, we spend, and then we give. That giving is the last one by design, because again, it means that once I've done these things, I've saved, I've invested, and I've spent, then of course, if I have left over and I'm a generous individual, of course I should give. We Jews flip this paradigm on its head. We actually give first. And obviously this is something that we all know, but you'd be surprised how many people know this and yet have a really hard time putting it into practice. I'm again, not an exception. I was this person. It's very interesting because when we talk about giving first, we all know, and I didn't grow up religious, so maybe some of you had a similar experience. We as Jews, we're all very, very generous. I mean, how could we not be? It's in our DNA, right? And we all grew up with this notion of tzedakah, but really, like, I think something got missed in the transmission of that we didn't really ever learn. What does that actually mean in practicality? And there's something that is part of tzedakah that's called meiser. That is what giving first means. And it's so fundamental to our financial lives that we cannot ignore it. So let's go through the Jewish financial structure. Number one, the foundation of my entire structure is bitachon. It's exclusive reliance on my creator. I can build the most sophisticated financial structure. If it's not standing on a solid foundation, again, I'm talking to Jewish people. You're never going to hear this anywhere else. And this is why, again, I was saying it's so important to really look at these things as Yidden, okay? Because the world can really confuse us. If it's not grounded on bitachon, it's meant to collapse. It's meant to collapse on some level. Maybe it's not collapsing financially, but you know where it's collapsing? In your mental health. You know where it's collapsing? In your relationship with God. You know where it's collapsing? In your relationship with your spouse. You know where it's collapsing? In your relationship with your children. Your life is meant to collapse. There is no such thing as somebody posted on LinkedIn the other day, and I was so disappointed because it was a Jewish colleague of mine who said, I usually do not mix God and money. And I was like, you bet what I responded, right? I was like, what? How could a Jew not mix God and money? Like, you know what I mean? Like it just, they go hand in hand. Like it goes hand in hand. Who is giving you the money, right? The minute you think, oh, it's me who makes the money and therefore I take care of it and you're so off track. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So bitachon is so fundamental, understanding what that is. And obviously this takes work, and that's why I teach it every week and so on and so forth, okay? So then after my foundation is on my building, my first floor is my meiser or my chomesh, right? That's 10 to 20% of my after-tax income. And then come my savings, and then my investments, and then of course my expenses. That's like in the beautiful ideal world. And of course, some things are not optional, like the meiser and the chomesh. And some of the other things we're going to work through, and I'll try to help you how at least to understand how we should try to move our money around so that we can achieve this. But just very, very quickly, again, what does bitachon mean? I plan. Yes, I manage my money. I make plans. I do what I need to do. I use bank accounts, and I automate things, and I do what I need to do. I look at my numbers, but I never worry. Again, easier said than done. That's why you have to come to class every week and you have to learn it with your husband, and you have to do all the things that I tell you to do about bitachon, okay? And why do I do it? Why do I engage with this resource? Why do I plan? Because God said so. Because God said, be in the world. Like he wants me to be involved with it. So again, it's divine service. Okay. One of the conditions, there's 5 conditions for bitachon to be real bitachon. Condition number 5 is effort. We all know it. Again, the more bitachon you have, the less effort you have to make. Okay. So it's a whole discussion. Okay. But again, we don't worry because we don't rely on those plans. We do them because that's a responsible thing to do according to the way that God set up the world, that we have to be involved in nature. And we don't break rules. We don't try to outsmart things and cut corners. No, like yesterday, somebody came to me that they're looking into an investment that a guy in the Kiddush promised them 30%, but he has to give him his savings by Thursday. And I'm like, stop, just stop. Okay. just stop. This is not Yiddishkeit. Like the Rebbe was so adamant that games like this that take away the menuchas hanefesh of a person, and in the Rebbe's time, playing the stock market, what's called trading, not really what we do today. Today we invest like in the overall stock market and we just set it and forget it. But really being in a trading position that we're constantly tethered to what stocks are doing is really antithetical to Yiddishkeit, because it means now you're really tethered to nature, to what did it do, what did it not do. That's not Yiddishkeit. That's not how a Jew a Jew needs to be in the world, and that's it. And then the rest sets, have the headspace to serve Hashem, okay? All right, so we rely exclusively on God, and when we do, we are managing our money, and we're planning happily, joyfully, and when we're done, we look like those emojis. The other thing that happens, guys, is that when we're not in that state of bitachon, and again, this is, and also when we are lacking a little bit of the education, we might find ourselves operating in what I call this scarcity loop, okay? Which means that we make decisions, a lot of decisions out of fear. And raise your hand if you can relate. I know I've been there, okay, right? I've been there, right? And anxiety, and we make a poor choice, and the outcome is negative, which then gives us more fear and more anxiety. Like it's this loop. But the good news is we can move past it. We can move into another loop, which is the abundance loop, which is where we start with gratitude and appreciation, and we know why we're doing things, right? And it gives us peace of mind, which then allows us to make wiser choices, right? We're not handing off our savings to the guy who's promising us 30% if I don't give him my money by Thursday, and it leads to positive outcomes that then leads to more gratitude. And that's much more of a healthier, and that's what we call an abundance loop. Okay. So what is the Jewish financial allocation? So Meiser Chomesh, I already said 10 to 20%. Obligatory, obviously there should be an asterisk there. Consult with your Rav. There are exceptions. There are a lot of, there's a lot of laws here, and everybody should try to have somebody that they could consult with and discuss their current financial situation and how they should be allocating their Meiser. But you need to be doing this. You need to be involved that this is happening, okay? And I'll talk a little bit about the best way to do this. Then there's going to be what I call the fixed cost, and I don't call them fixed costs because they don't move, because they're set, because they're your mortgage payment, which doesn't move every month. I call them fixed because they have to happen. For example, tuition has to happen. Well, tuition would be fixed, right? Electricity might not be fixed, but it has to happen. Water has to happen. The car payment has to happen, at least for one car, maybe, depending on where you live. The rent has to happen. Food has to happen, and food is variable, right? There's certain things that are your fundamental that they have to happen, right? And then there's so 40 to 50% of our what's it called, of our take-home pay. And then there's savings, 5 to 10%. Then investing, and we'll talk about all these things a little bit more in detail, at least 10%. And then after that, there's like this, what I like to say, spend as you like, spend in whatever, as long as it's aligned with your values, you'll be very happy to do it, okay? So with that, it's like 20 to 35%. And you're so cute, you're taking a picture, but I'm giving you a fun spreadsheet so you can have it all that and you can use it, okay? So this all I have in a mindful spending plan. I told Michal that I would give you a little gift. So when you go on this link, yaeltrusch.com/MSP for mindful spending plan, use the code Chassidus. But guys, use that code because otherwise you'll get charged. Use the code Chassidus and it'll be completely free. Okay. And what I do there is I help you see how are you covering your Meiser? Are you covering those fixed? How much do you have left over that you can actually invest, how much you have left over that you can actually enjoy just in the extra things. So it gives you a lot of clarity without being this overwhelming, huge budget, which I've moved away from those because it just, again, it's overwhelming and then people don't do anything. But I need people to understand that they have to be familiar with their numbers, because unlike what we think, which is numbers are really scary and I don't want to look at them, right? They actually give us a tremendous amount of clarity. And for anybody thinking, yeah, but I know the kind of clarity they're going to give me, they're going to tell me that I don't have enough, I will challenge you to try it and you'll see that it's actually really empowering, because it's very empowering to actually know where you're holding rather than this whole huge blown out of proportion kind of like idea. I think I know, no, like numbers are numbers. Like let's get familiar with them so that we can actually make decisions, because I need a starting point so that I can move forward. How am I going to start if I don't know exactly where I'm holding? So that's why I designed this mindful spending plan, because I want people to really have the clarity without the overwhelm. So check it out over there and get it for free with the code Chassidus. And you'll see. Okay, so now, what kind of accounts? Really practical. What kind of accounts should I have? Okay. So for my expenses, you all know this. You have a regular checking account. Okay. When it comes to Meiser, you guys, again, I talked to a couple last night. One of her real discomforts with her money is that, as every Jew, they're very generous, and she's very generous. But guess what? She feels always that that money's leaving. People ask them for money, and it leaves, and then she feels really bad because she needs money to go to the grocery, and and she always feels like really, it's not a nice feeling for her to give anymore, because it's like it's always leaving for other people. And the solution to that is, well, you need to have a Meiser account. And many people are not taught this. You need to have a separate account, and I encourage you guys to make it like a sub savings account from your checking account, or a savings account connected to your checking account. You need to have a Meiser account that when you get paid, and many of you told me that you're full-time employees. I think there was one business owner. So that might be a little bit more complicated, but we can discuss that as well. You get paid probably bi-weekly or whatever it is, right? Twice a month. You just take that 10% or that 20%, whatever you might decide, and you automatically transfer it into that account. And then from there, that's where you give. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't borrow against yourself if you want to give somebody and the account is in zero. And by the way, this is the only account you'll always feel great about it getting to a zero balance. And that's what it should do. It should constantly be getting full and empty, full and empty. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. So let's be excited about that. That means we're doing the right thing. Obviously, there's a step above that, which is really tracking it. And that's even more ideal. Like not just separating it and putting it there. That is a level, and it already ensures that we're actually giving the 10%. But an extra level of assurance is if we actually track it with a spreadsheet. I actually happen to have dropped my trusted and loving spreadsheet that I used to teach everyone to use and everybody loved, for a new app. I didn't write it here, so you guys take note. It's called EZ Meiser, like E and the letter Z, right? The letter Z, Meiser, and it's free, and it's so, so amazing. And now I do it all there. Okay, so that's just a little tip so that you can track it, but definitely open the account. And I want you guys to think about, and I know that a lot of people already bank with these like really big traditional banks like Wells Fargo and Bank of America, and I shouldn't be throwing out these names, and Chase. A lot of these big institutions don't have a lot of flexibility, and they're really frustrating. So I'm just giving you the tip. If you can try, I know it's not something that we can do overnight because we have so many things linked or whatever, but try at least to make it a goal, like something that you're looking towards, to try to move away from these banks and move to bank with an institution that offers you multiple sub savings accounts, that gives you no fees for transferring, no fees for low balance, because again, your Meiser account is going to be on zero. So you don't want to be working with a bank that's going to be, again, that you're going to have to keep an account, but then you have to calculate. I mean, you have to give an amount, you have to keep an amount there, but you have to calculate that you haven't given that amount of money. It's just, why should we do that? And obviously we want to make sure that it's FDIC insured. That means that the U.S. government is insuring your deposits up to a certain amount, $250,000, and there's more details to that, but that's important to know. So this is just like little tips that sometimes we don't know, but it just makes managing our money so much easier and so much more convenient, because a lot of these things are really organization. Like people always ask me, and I say, look, managing money is 20% like strategy and 80% organization. Like it really, really is. And we just, life gets busy and we tend to set things up. And like, I met somebody the other day who has 11 credit cards, and like, it just, and 3 bank accounts with 3, I mean, it gets very complicated for no reason, just because we move and we this and we change, and it gets very disorganized. So the more we can get a little bit organized, I mean, I'm not a professional organizer, but if we can like Marie Kondo the situation, the better we are. So I highly recommend that we look into financial institutions that have these things. Okay. So now how do we allocate? Okay. So when it comes to our savings, I want you to think in 3 buckets. Okay. I want you to think bucket number one, opportunities. That means to say the things that the world outside of our world calls emergency. They call it an emergency fund. I'm sure many of you have heard this, right? I like to call it an opportunity fund. That means to say that, yeah, your pipes broke, but maybe it's an opportunity to do some work in the kitchen that you wanted to do for a long time, right? Let's reframe it, right? Or it might mean that you take a sabbatical and you start a business, or it might mean that, I don't know, you have to take longer maternity because you had twins or whatever it is, right? So that's money that you have to think of as liquid, because if you need to use it, you want to make sure you have access to it. Now, how much is that money going to be? It depends on everybody's risk tolerance, but our goal should be pretty much, people in the industry, in the personal finance space, recommend 3 to 6 months of living expenses. And that would be kind of like the bare bone, maybe that category in the mindful spending plan that's called fixed. It's like the things that need to get paid, so that in case we lose our job, in case we're in a transition with a baby or, some situation, right? We have some liquidity to work with. Again, I know for some of us, this is a real challenge to get there, but I'm just giving you the idea. And those of you in the group who are younger and have the luxury of starting early to do these things, please take me seriously. Because once you get to a little bit more advanced in life, where you have more expenses and you have more children, you have more demands on the resource that God is giving you. And also sometimes you've overcomplicated things. So it's harder to simplify them. These things are harder to do. So for those of you who are younger, the older ones in the group are telling you, just listen and do this, because I wish somebody had taught me this when I was like in my 20s. Okay. So savings, think of opportunity fund. Okay. That's liquid money, 3 to 6 months of expenses. Then I want you to think of your joy bucket. My joy bucket is short and medium-term goals. That's money that stays, again, liquid, semi-liquid. That's, I have a bar mitzvah coming up in 3 years. That's, we want to go to Eretz Israel in a year. That's, I don't know, I want to remodel my kitchen in 5 years, something really within that, this year to 5 years, for some people, maybe 7 years, but really it's short term to medium term. Okay. We're not going to tie it to anything that then I can't get access to. We're going to leave it pretty liquid. Okay. And then we have our future bucket. And that is longer term. That's longer than 7 years. It's, or longer than 10 years, maybe, depending. It depends how you look at it. Okay. It's money that I don't need today. Or even if, let's say, let me put it like this. You might feel like you need it today, but the truth is, if you want to be proactive and think about long-term, how you want to live your life, you probably want it to be working for you so that longer term, you can do certain things. And those things might be marrying off a child. It might be buying a property. It might be quote unquote retiring, although we don't believe in retirement, but the Jewish version of retirement, which might be that I want to shift my energies towards more volunteer work or more travel to visit my grown children rather than, run my business, or, we're always going to be busy, but we might shift energies a little bit. We want to shift energies to not having to depend on generating income. So that's long-term. That's what people call retirement, right? Or, longer term projects. Okay. So in terms,
can I catch you for a second?
Yeah.
There was a question on the definition liquid. There was a question.
Sure. Nice. Thank you. I'm glad you asked, because I don't want anybody for jargon to be something that stops anyone. Liquid means I have access to it right away. Like I can go on my debit card and take the money right away. Okay. Whereas non-liquid, it means I might have to sell an asset to get access to that money, right? So to give you a classic example, you might own a property, right? That has a value, right? Let's say that property is worth $500,000. That's great, but it's not liquid, meaning if I need the money tomorrow or in 2 weeks because I really need to pay for my daughter's wedding, or obviously I could take a loan against it, but let's say I lose my job, right? I need to pay the mortgage. I can't just sell my house in 2 days to make that payment, right? It's not liquid, right? It's tied up. So liquid money means I can just, at the click of a button, get access to my money. Does that clarify it? Does that make sense? Okay. All right. It's a great question. Thank you for asking. Okay. So savings. So my opportunity fund, typically we want to keep it in a high yield savings account. That's what it says there, HYSA. That means high yield savings account. That's an account that gives you a little bit more interest rate than your regular traditional savings account. And the reason we want to keep it there is because of the higher interest rate. And obviously because that fund has a little bit more money, right? It's growing. Now you have a couple $1,000s there. You keep adding money to it. And so you want to make sure that it's, you're getting that money. So, but again, it's a savings account, meaning it's liquid. To the person who asked about liquidity, it means that I still, if I need to access it, I can transfer it right away into my checking account. I can have a debit. You know what I mean? I have access to that money. It's not tied to any asset that I have to sell, and then I have to pay capital gains taxes or taxes on the growth or anything like that. Okay. So that's liquid. When we talk about joy savings, right? Joy meaning the remodeling, meaning the trip to Israel, meaning the whatever, I don't know, whatever you're buying. I don't know what you're doing, but whatever is that, you want to take a very important class or coaching program, whatever it is, right? So typically we can leave it in those regular sub savings accounts. That I like with different banks. Capital One is one of my Capital One Bank is one of my favorites. There's also a bank called Ally that's also really good about this, giving you sub savings accounts. Again, they're free and you just have everything very organized and you can label it. Like one is called Meister. The other one can be called Bar Mitzvah Trip. The other, or Israel Trip or Bar Mitzvah or, whatever it is, right? Or we can put the money in a high yield savings account. Those are always good options, okay? You could also do the following for short-term goals. There's also something called certificates of deposit or U.S. Treasury bills. I can talk about that maybe at the end a little bit, but just so you're familiar with the lingo, these things are also options. The thing is that they tie your money a little bit longer. Like usually, you'll buy it for a certain amount of time, and then after it ends, then you can get the money. So it's not as liquid, but you might get a little bit of a return. But if we really want liquidity, probably a high yield savings account. Okay. We don't want to keep more than a year's worth of living expenses sitting in a bank account. That's way too much money. Okay. It really, really is. You want to do, like, if you have more than a year's worth, you want to be doing something more with it, because again, you want to make sure that your money is always keeping up with the rate of inflation. That's how our money loses purchasing power over time. It's something called inflation. Okay. So if a savings account is giving you 1% and the rate of inflation is 3%, then you're not keeping up with it. And so that's why we want to, whenever we're thinking about longer term money that we don't need access to, we want to make sure that it's doing something a little bit more than that it's working for us so that it's growing. Okay. So don't leave so much cash beyond a year. I once got a call from somebody and they had literally I don't know, almost 2 years worth of living expenses because they were so nervous that they could lose their money, right? It comes from a place of fear, but it wasn't such a financially smart idea. And also because it was more than what the federal government insures per account. So you're at risk of, if something happens to you as economy, you lose the money. Again, I'm not saying that we should worry about these things, but it's just good things to know that are kind of like practical things to know. Okay, investments, guys, which is kind of like the big topic that we could probably have a whole session just on it. So this is just like a little bit like touching the surface only. Okay. When we talk about investments, I'm not talking about real estate today. I'm talking literally something that everybody has access to. It's low-hanging fruit. It does what it needs to do, and that is stocks and bonds. What are stocks and bonds? Stocks means that I take ownership over a company, right? So Michal has a company called Living Chassidus. She opens it up to the public market, and people like you and I buy portions of Michal's company. And Michal also owns a portion of the company, and we all have a little part of the company. And whenever Michal ends her year and she has profits, she divides the profits amongst her owners, and those are called dividends. Okay. Now, I'm not saying to anyone that we go and pick. If we were to pick Living Chassidus, that would be a very good one, okay? But I'm not saying to anyone that they should invest in individual stocks. I'm just giving you the concept of a stock, okay? What I am going to say is that you need to invest in the stock market, but you want to invest in the entire market, meaning to say that it doesn't matter if it goes up or down. You could go to sleep at night. Why? Because it's always going to go up and down, right? On a day. And in the short term, but over the long term, we know historically that it always goes up. So we are thinking that's money that I'm going to touch in 15 years and 18 years and 20 years. It doesn't really matter to me what it does today. Last week, the stock market went down. And so what? Like, because I don't need my money tomorrow. It's not there for tomorrow. Do you see the difference? Like the money that you need for tomorrow, we already learned. We're keeping it pretty liquid, kind of pretty safe, right? Everything else that I want for the future, I want it to be growing for me at a much higher rate. Therefore, I'm going to invest it. I'm taking the risk that in the short term, it might have that volatility, but because I'm not using it in the short term, then I'm taking the return, which is what it's going to give me over time, which is going to be much more than any savings account. Okay. What is a bond? A bond is different than a stock. It means that a company or a government or a municipality needs to raise money. So they take loans from us. We're investors. We're literally lending them the money, and they pay a fixed price. Okay. As we get closer to older age, and I'm getting a little bit too in the weeds, but I just don't want anybody to walk out of here like not knowing definitions. Okay. As we get older, we are going to need more access to the money that our investments generate. We tend to shift more towards having bonds because they're pretty safe. The return is lower than stocks. They're pretty safe. And obviously now we need the money, so we don't want to take the short-term risk. Does that make sense, right? Like if I'm already at a later age where that's the money that I'm going to live off, then there's no long-term anymore, right? So I can't just keep it in a place that's going to be very volatile. I have to be a little bit more conservative. So we kind of shift our investments to a more conservative place. Okay, so if we're employed, I want you just to make note of this. That way, when you go home and you kind of have conversations or you hear from your HR department at work or whatever, you kind of know what's happening. Okay, you're going to have something, an employer is going to give you something that's a retirement plan. And so many employers will give you a 401k plan. That is a plan where you invest money. They take money from your paycheck and you choose the type of investment, what kind of fund you wanted it in, and every month your money goes in there and it's growing for you in the background as you live your life, okay? If you work for a nonprofit, they often offer what's called a 403b. You also, as an individual, can open something called a Roth IRA. By the way, you can open something called a traditional IRA, but that's not if you're employed, whatever. You can call me, you can email me for these details, but I'm just giving you so you have a general understanding, okay? You can also have what's called a taxable brokerage account, which is you invest in the stock market in a fund, and no, you don't get any tax benefits by doing it, but you don't get any deductions for your contributions, but you have the flexibility of accessing your money pretty without any penalties. It's not tied up like a lot of these accounts, like the 401k, for example, it's money that's tied up till you're 59 and a half. You can't really touch it. If you touch it, then there's a penalty because really the goal is that it should be there for retirement. So it's just things to keep in mind. And obviously we can talk about this at another time. But if you're self-employed, then there's other ways to also invest. You should just have in mind that there are ways. Okay. So how do I know which accounts do I fund? So it depends on the goals that I have. How do I know what do I mean by it depends on the goals? Goals need to be values-based and they need to be numbers-based, meaning to say a goal is not the same as a value. A value is, and everybody's going to have different values. A value is something like self-growth, my faith, my shalom bayit, my family, freedom, what's another? Self-growth, beauty tends to be also kind of a value. There are things that they're almost like they're harder to grasp and describe, but if you really get very honest with yourself, they're really what really triggers a person and gives them a tremendous amount of joy. Like it just aligns with who you are, right? And we, thank God, have a very clear paradigm of what should be our values, because Yiddishkeit kind of tells us, right? It's family, it's Jewish continuity, it's generosity, it's, these things are real values, right? They're really like if you think of your life towards the end of your life, it's like, I wanted my life to represent these things, right? Those are values, okay? So then we also have, what are the numbers, right? So what's the point of, why am I telling you the values thing? It's because any goal that you have needs to be anchored in a value. It can't be just the goal because Yael said, or because my sister-in-law does it like that, because it's very hard to motivate ourselves if it's not of the essence. So meaning to say, if it's not tethered to the fact that this is good for my Shalom Bayit, or this is my connection to my faith, or this is, my Jewish continuity, or something that's really essential, then it's very hard to do the work to really work for that money or make that money work for me, whichever way you want to look at it, if it's not tethered to something that's really of the essence to you. So that's why that it's important. But then there's the other aspect, which is, what are my numbers? How do I know what to tackle first if I don't know what I have? Meaning to say, do I have debt? Do I have savings? How much do I have in savings? Do I have $400 or do I have 2 months of expenses saved? Do I have a credit card debt or do I have student loans? All these things, these numbers are going to determine what I do first and what I do second. Okay. So numbers based means, okay, what is the amount of debt and savings that I currently have? I have to know that. And again, this is why the mindful spending plan is actually really good. Okay. If a person does not have high interest credit card debt or personal loans, then you have a green light to focus on saving and investing goals. You can start tackling the opportunities, the joy bucket, and the future bucket right away. So, all them out, good for you. Now, if you have credit card debt, I'm going to go through this super quickly because there's a lot more that I want to cover. Then there's ways to get out of it. Step number one is we want to stabilize it. So we got to get to a place where we can stop using them. And obviously we need a cushion, because if we don't have a cushion, then if something comes up, we're going to continue to use them. So the first idea is to have something in savings. $1,000 is probably not enough, but it's a good start. But maybe you aim for $5,000. And then you're really going to get really aggressive in making those, in really paying that debt down. Okay. And one of the reasons is because, again, the money that you're using to continuously pay those credit cards is money that could be invested, and you're paying the credit card a lot more than what you're getting in the stock market or anywhere else. And so it just, you can't build wealth. It's just like your money's always tied to the credit card company. You can never, you're just completely, it's like your funds are tied. You can't do the process of building wealth, which is really saving and investing. Okay. And by the way, this is not such a pleasant topic, but even your Meiser is affected, because if you call, most Rabbanim will tell you that, unfortunately, depending on the amount of credit card debt or whatever, it might be that your Meiser obligation ends up being part of what you use to pay your credit cards. And that is not a very comfortable place to be, because we all want to be able to give and support the things and the individuals that we love. So the causes that we like. So, we want to get into this, like, this is a snowball, because the way to really tackle this whole debit card, the credit card situation. And I want to say maybe this, what's his name? He's not Jewish, he's very Christian. Dave Ramsey. I want to say he coined this, but I'm not 100% sure, but I for sure heard it from him first. Which is the idea that we tackle the lowest credit card first, then we go to the one higher, and then we keep moving up, but we tackle the smallest first, because we want to get momentum, like kind of like a snowball effect. Okay. Now, if you are in credit card debt, or if you've had debt in the past and you paid it down, but you got back into the cycle, then for many people, they tell me, no, but I need the points. I need the points benefits. Just get rid of this whole cycle. Don't focus on the points or whatever the benefits you're getting, because it's actually, and you can see it, it's not worth it. Like, it's riskier. The risk of staying in that debt cycle and constantly overspending, spending more than what you make, and not allowing you to save and invest, which is making your money work for you, is much greater than whatever benefit you're getting by having your points, whatever the points may be, or whatever benefit the card is giving you. So I know this is controversial. Not many people like this, but it's a hard truth. Okay. Now, if you don't have debt, or you use your credit card like a debit card, which means that you pay it in full every month, you never charge more than what you earn or can pay every month or whatever, then yeah, enjoy the point benefits. And then you can literally start saving and investing right away. If you have debt, then I would recommend you probably tackle that first. I'm not saying we can't do it in tandem, but sometimes it becomes a little bit harder. Okay. So how much do I put towards those savings goals? Okay. So now or debt repayment goals, whatever they might be. Okay. Because if you have debt, you got to see, how do I repay this debt? I have $50,000. I want to pay it. I don't know, in 2 years. Okay. So it depends on how much income I make and what are my expenses. Same things with the savings, right? I need to know what my income and my expenses are. And like I told you before, we want to make sure that we're saving 5 to 10% and we're investing 10 to 20%. Again, this is recommended. I don't want anybody to say, well, if I can't save that much, then I might as well not do it. Just start wherever you are. Like, building the habit is so much more important. And I'll tell you a little secret. To me, it's so wonderful that God gave us the mitzvah of Meiser, not for many reasons, obviously. And this, not the one I'm about to tell you, not the main one, but the kind of like the fringe benefit is, and this is God's wisdom, is the same habit that we're supposed to build, the same muscle of pulling 10% of our after-tax earnings and setting it aside to put it away, is the same literally exact psychological muscle that we need to put money aside and just not touch it. Okay, so once we've built that habit of learning that not everything that we get is what we live off of, it just becomes so much easier. Like, when we know, no, not everything that I get, I got $100, 10 are not mine. Oh, and another 10 are also not mine today. They're for my future, right? So it's the same mechanics. And sometimes people don't realize that it's such a blessing to have that, because once we built it in, it's much easier to manage our money, because it really is the same mechanics. Okay. So I mentioned this before, and this is why investing is so important, is because a lot of people think, okay, so really to be wealthy, you have to be a high earner. The truth is, wealth and financial growth is not a function of how much you earn. I work with people with very, very, very high income and with very, very little wealth built. Okay. Your ability to build wealth or to grow financially is a function, directly related to how much you save and you invest. Okay. So that's really important. So even if you don't make, especially those of you, again, I'm going to stress this, if you're younger and you don't have as many financial commitments as some of us do, please, this is the time to start to getting used to putting your Meiser aside and putting money for yourself aside. Getting used to that is going to help you so much more later in life, because it just becomes a habit. Okay. All right. So I want to make sure that I'm making money while I sleep. And that means that my money is earning in dividends, like I mentioned before, that all those stocks that are, that I invest in a lot of stocks in the whole market, those companies are paying their profits. They're called dividends. And that's how I'm making my money. There's also interest that I'm making in my different savings accounts, or if I'm invested in certificates of deposits or any other, kind of things like that. And there's also capital appreciation happening in the background, meaning to say that all those companies are growing over time, right? The economy grows. It always grows over the long term, right? Why? Because Hashem made humans want to always evolve and improve. So you always see that we're moving forward. We're moving towards a beautiful, wonderful world of Mashiach. So the world, it gets better and better and better and better. I don't have to tell you that. We live in such an incredible world nowadays compared to our grandparents' world, right? So you can be sure that things are going to appreciate over time, because we're constantly, as humans, evolving and bringing innovation and creating more in the world. So that's capital appreciation. That means whatever you invest in, it's growing. And we want to make sure that when it comes to our dividends that are coming into our accounts, those profit payments from the companies and the interest, those are compounding, meaning that they're growing over time. And I think it was Einstein who said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And whoever understands it earns it, and whoever doesn't pays it. And we know it because we pay it in those high interest credit cards, right? Why are those credit cards spiraling out of control so quickly? Because of the power of compounding, right? The power of compounding. They're charging you interest on interest on interest on interest on not just on the money that you spend, but on the interest on the money, and it just keeps compounding and compounding. So the earlier we start investing, the better, because the more compounding works for us. And time is going to be the most important factor, always, and a lot more than the amount that you invest. Okay, so I'm going to show you little numbers for the number of people in our group. And by the way, I happen to not be a very numbers person. I mean, I love numbers, but I'm not obsessed with them. But this is kind of a powerful graph to show you the power of starting early. We're running out of time. And it assumes that you take $300 out of your paycheck and you invest it every month from the age of 25 till the age of 65. And you see that if you start at age 25, you end up with over $1 million. But if you start at age 35, putting $300 a month away, then you end up with a little less than $500,000. At age 45, you end up with less. And so the point here is the earlier we start, and it can be something as little as $300 a month, even though that might seem like a lot for some of us, depending on the stage in our life. But most people start with, let's say, even $100 a month. And as they grow, they might start increasing it. Then you increase it to $200 a month. Then you increase it to $300. Then maybe you get to a point where it's 500 or, $1,000, 1,500, whatever it is. The idea is just start, okay? All right. I'm not going to go through this because I think you guys get the point and I want to get to questions. And what do I invest in? Okay, this is kind of like an important question. And it's tricky because I'm giving it to you without giving you a whole class in investing, but at least I want you to say, I heard that and now I want to find out more, okay? Again, when I say investing, I want you to bear in mind that what you're looking at it is the total market. And then within the total market, there's a few ways to do this. There's something called mutual funds, which tend to be really pretty high in fees that you end up paying those fees. And then there's something called low cost index funds, or ETFs, exchange traded funds, that do the exact same thing, meaning they have all the companies in the market or all the companies in what's called the S&P 500, which are the 500 largest companies in the United States. They're all in this fund, but they don't charge you the high fees that mutual funds do. And there's reasons for this, and call me to give you the reasons, because if I do it now, we're never going to end, okay? But I at least want you to know it, okay? And even Warren Buffett says that, even though he's like the biggest investor, he says that 99% of people should really just invest in index funds, okay, with very low cost, where you can go to platforms like Vanguard, Betterment, Fidelity, Schwab. Long gone are the days where you had to go to somebody and sit behind a dark mahogany brown, dark brown desk and, feel all intimidated. You can literally open this account and do it yourself. And if you're get involved in my world, I have many ways teaching you how to do that. Okay. Bottom line is, guys, no one is going to care about your money more than you do. Okay. Nobody's going to care more about your money than you do. So we have to work constantly in our bitachon, which is kind of a little bit how we started on that foundation of the structure. And at the same time, then we have to go in the world, in the weeds of it, and take responsibility and manage the money, but with a mindfulness of why we're doing it, why this is important, and take it seriously because it is a responsibility. Now, at the same time, that seriousness does not mean that we don't do it joyfully. We have to do it with joy because, again, it is part of serving Hashem. And by the way, I'll tell you something that's often overlooked is that there is a really direct correlation between being a happy person and being wealthier, okay? Or at least being happier with your money and being able to generate more money, okay? There is something to being in that higher vibration that attracts, that God says, oh, that person is ready to serve me, and opportunities land at you. And actually, even without that, we can say like happy people gravitate towards happy people, opportunities gravitate towards people want to work with happy people, right? So you're going to get more opportunities, more connections. There's just something about it. So now that we're in the month of Simcha, I wanted to mention it. Okay. So the reason that we do it really is because God is asking us to do it, and he's giving us the merit to do it. I mean, it's a huge zchus that he wants us to do it. So just to leave you a little bit with this, because it's actually something that I talk about a lot, is okay, Yael, how do I even stay on track? Like, how do I tackle these things? I like what you're saying. I know I have to do it. Look, I love something called a money date. We can also call it a money party. It depends, whatever you want. It doesn't matter the name. The idea is the same. The idea is like this. You have scheduled times on your calendars, and I put calendars here because most of us are married, okay? But even if you're single, you should still start having these. And this is a time where you discuss anything and everything that has to do with your financial life. This is really a time. And all the to-dos happening during that time. They don't happen during bath time. They don't happen at random times. They don't happen like none of that, because then it just creates stress in the marriage and conversations that nobody's ready for, and it's just not a good recipe. Okay, during these money dates, we tell our money where it's going to go, and we do it based on our values, right? The values are always going to help us make those trade-offs, because we're always going to have to make a trade-off, right? And so the values are going to tell us, recently I had to make a decision whether to go to a wedding, but I also had a lot of very important values aligned expenses. The wedding was fine, I mean, but it was a wedding. It was a wedding. It was out of town. It was in Latin America. It wasn't a family wedding, so it wasn't family. It was friendship. It was just the daughter of a friend. Okay, fine. And at the same time, I have a big bar mitzvah. I also had to go to a JLI summit, which has to do with my values of growth and education and philanthropy, and a lot of things that were really like pulling. And I was like, I felt so uncomfortable about spending the money on this wedding, and I couldn't figure out why. And it was until I sat with my husband, I was like, this is just so not values aligned. Like, I don't need to be at this wedding. I could just send a gift. I don't need to spend $1,000 to travel just to be seen. It's just so not my type, right? But I do need to be at JLI, but I do need to buy the tefillin. And I need, like, there was so many things that are so like, it was such a joy for me to get to spend the money on those things. You see what I'm saying? And it just something felt really off. And it was just really getting clear on my values that I said, oh, and once I said, okay, I'm not going to the wedding, it was like such a relief. My husband's like, oh my gosh, you look so relieved. So values, getting really in touch with your values is really important. Okay. And you tell your money where to go based on how much you make, what are the expenses, and what's the cash flow, because money moves, right? And what's coming in this week, what do I need to pay out this week? Can I push something up, till the next pay period, etc. And obviously, what are my goals? And these dates should happen regularly. When people tell me, can I have them like every 6 months? I'm like, no, because your money doesn't move every 6 months. So you want to have them. I'm not saying if you have little kids, have them every week, but ideally, yeah, every week, every 2 weeks, at most every month. You want to be able to kind of be in touch with what's happening, okay? And be able to have the space to communicate, okay? So again, define goals, look at your numbers, all these good things, pay bills. You could do it all in your money dates. Amazing. Okay, so now I do want to restate this, because I think this is going to be a really neat tool for you guys. So again, the mindful spending plan, yaeltrusch.com/MSP. And Michal, you can send them this again later if you want to, and then remind them to use the code so we can get it for free. I put the code for free for like a week or something, so that whoever is watching the replay has time. Okay, so I covered a lot. So let's hit the questions, because that's actually always my favorite part. And if I had my way, I would just make all these sessions Q&A sessions. But let's do it.
That was incredible. So I want to start off, first of all, by all the comments I've been getting on how refreshing your starting was, how refreshing it is to start with bitachon, to start with Hashem. Sometimes it's all these money talks go into like make
Oh my
more,
gosh,
do
yes.
more, move your money here, move it there. And it's like, 1 second, Hashem is the one. We have to do our part, but that
we
was
have to
so
frame
beautiful.
it, and we have to keep it. And, I tell people, when you start a money date, start with gratitude. Start with 5 minutes of learning a page of Shar Bitachon. Start again, put yourself in the frame, frame the conversation. Don't just jump into, oh, how much do we have? How much do we need? No, give a context as much as you can. Again, and that's looking at things like a yid, right? We have to always be refining the lens. And we know it in this group. We're living Chassidus. It's all about creating that sensitivity in the lens, and even with our money, and probably especially with our money, because by the way, money is the place where we can become most desensitized to God, because it's the natural tendency is to forget who's giving us the money, right? The natural tendency is for us to think that we're tethered, that we're making it, and that it's tethered to the laws of nature. But a Jew knows that that's not the case, not at all.
I love that.
And
So
we have to force ourselves
been
to know that. We might know it, but if it doesn't get to feeling, then that's the disconnect. We have to feel it,
rocking. Love it. Okay, so one of the questions was, how do we join the bitachon class? And I think if you want to share, Yael Trusch.
.com/bitachon.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
There's
that's
also a Spanish one, so that's also available. Um,
oh.
okay. There was a question about why specifically savings. I have a separate bank account, but it's checking. So
Mhm.
how do you what's the difference between a checking bank account and a
Great
savings bank
question.
account?
Great question. So the reason we want to separate things is because your checking is for everything that needs to come out, right? It's for all the expenses. Your different savings account, it's what's going to give you that vessel for the things that you want to achieve, right? I want to, for example, I have a bar mitzvah coming up. So a few months ago, I had to pay to fill in. Beautiful thing. Now it's a big investment, right? So if I hadn't had a little vessel where over time I had been putting money there, that when I had to send the money to Israel, I had those $3,000 or $4,000 sitting there, it might not happened. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's giving it intentionality, because if everything just stays in a checking account and everything gets mingled and it allows you to just kind of spend and spend and spend. But what we're trying to do is say, okay, what are the things that matter? What are the vessels that I need to build so that those things happen, right? So if I want to save for a family trip to Israel, so I have to put that money somewhere. So does that help? So it's just a way of organizing things and give it intentionality and mindfulness, right?
Love that. Love that. Um,
Oh, so she
okay,
asked a separate credit card too. I see here Gilda's asking.
um, oh yeah, so separate credit card too. Yes, correct.
So no, not
I guess
separate.
she was saying for Meister.
Oh no, for my sir, you could have a checking account for my sir, but it should be a separate. What the most important thing is that it should be a separate account, and that you shouldn't have no fees involved, ideally.
Mhm.
Um, do you need a separate debit card for it? You could, if you do it sub savings account, which is the way I do it, and most people do it, you just immediately transfer from the Mysore account on your app into your checking account and then send the Zelle like that, or use your debit card to put it into the charity campaign or whatever you're doing. You know what I mean? But if it helps you to have a separate debit card just for the Mysore account because you have a separate checking account for it, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you can have something that's separate, that you can always have that money there. And, it makes it so easy because, again, now when somebody calls or you get that WhatsApp, the money's there. And sometimes if it's not there, then you can make a decision whether you're borrowing against yourself or not, or whatever, or you can make a decision with your husband. Is there a minimum amount this year? And these are good conversations to have before Rosh Hashanah. That whenever somebody asks, we're going to say yes, regardless of what's in the Meister account. That's also something nice. You can say, you know what? We're going to always give $36, no matter what, right? That's also true. But again, Meister, we're not talking about anything above Meister, which tzedakah, anything above Chumash, right? Meister needs to be accounted for, needs to be exact. The Chachamim tell us very clearly, do not estimate. It's so important for us to really, really, again, this is a key to financial abundance. So we don't want to play with this. We want to really honor it. We want to really keep it as carefully as possible because it's a big channel for bracha, for blessing. You
Mhm.
usually give Meiser immediately, meaning to say you separate it immediately. And then you're saying you directly give it to someone. That also works, that you directly donate. Okay, I guess, but again, what if you don't? You know what I mean? Like, what if you don't? What if that month? I mean, if that's working for you, it's fine. I would, however, encourage you, Geula, to at least then have a tally somewhere, whether it be the Easy Meister app or whether it be a spreadsheet where you're keeping track of how much you're giving, and so that you can come Elul time, you can say, oh, I actually did give my exact
All of it.
10%. Otherwise, then you know that you have to finish giving whatever you owe in Meister.
Mhm. Beautiful. Do you have any advice for non-fixed income, someone who's like owning business owner, how to allocate
Yes,
things?
I do. 1 second. Ruth just checked and she said she applied the code and it didn't work. I'm quite surprised because I tested it this morning, but if it doesn't work, then after this, I will fix it and I will let Michal know. So thank you for letting me know. So weird because I did test it. It should go to 0. It should not be 27%. It should not be $27 once you apply the code. You know what? You could also use this code. Oh, use this code. This will also take you to 0. Shayna, I just give it to Ruth. You can put it in the everyone. But I think Chassidus should work. I actually don't want people to use Shayna because I'm not sure if it's going to work. So I'm going to delete that, Ruth. Delete message. Okay, back to the question.
Is it
I'll
meant to
check
be
on that.
all caps? Maybe. Could it
Yeah,
be?
it has to be all caps, I think. So try that. Back to the question.
Yes, that
Remind me,
works.
Michal.
All caps, just work.
Oh,
Okay,
beautiful.
so
Chassidus, all caps.
yeah, Chassidus in all caps. What would be some advice for someone who's a business owner and it's
Yes.
not fixed income?
Phenomenal question. Okay, if you are a business owner and you're not in fixed income, are you already paying yourself salary? That's my question number 1 to this individual. Are you paying yourself salary somehow? Because some business owners are still keeping like the money in the business. So if you're paying look, sometimes we're already paying. The reason I'm asking the question, if you're already paying yourself a set salary, then things are going to be easier. If you're not paying yourself a set salary, then I want to encourage you to decide on a percentage that you will pay yourself. Meaning to say, let's say you had a client that paid you $10,000, right? So many people take the $10,000 and they like, Pesach is coming, I take the $10,000. The problem with that is that financially becomes very complicated. Also, you need to be saving money for taxes. And also, it really hinders your business from continuing to grow. Ideally, you would want to decide on keeping a certain percentage inside your business. So let's say 50% stays in the business, $5,000, okay? And $5,000 are your salary, let's say, for example. If that's the case, okay, the $5,000 that are in the business now are going to be used for taxes. Let's say you take 20% of that and you put it aside for taxes. Then there are also going to be operating expenses. And then there's saving within the company so that you can invest in bigger things. Now, the $5,000 that you paid yourself, okay, so the 50%, the other 50%, then now you would allocate it Meiser, right? So $500 goes to the Meiser account. Saving, let's say you have you're working towards your opportunity fund. Okay. So let's say you put 5% that. Let's say you're working also towards your son's bar mitzvah. Another 5% goes towards that. You get to decide these percentages. Okay. And let's say you're also already putting money in in an investment account in Vanguard, right? 5% goes there. So you see what I'm saying? So now from your business, you've created the system where every time you get paid, you take a percentage and you pay it to yourself, and the other percentage always stays in the business. Within the business, how does it get separated? It gets separated into taxes, into operations, and into savings for the business, right? And then the payment that you make yourself gets separated in the ways that we talked about before, which is your Meiser, your opportunity savings, your joy savings, your investment savings, like those 3 buckets. Yeah, make sense?
Amazing. Loved it. The next question is, which institution for savings account do you recommend?
Oh, well, for high yield savings, I think that's probably what she means. Because typically for regular saving, we just mean like if it's just like something, a sub savings account that like just our regular savings account. But once we're starting to put a little bit more money, or that we wanted a little bit more, sometimes more arm's length. So what I recommend is look how much is the high yield savings account paying in your bank, in your regular institution, or just do a little search what other institutions are paying. You don't want to tie yourself up into something that's like super not convenient. But I, for example, like using Betterment because I invest with Betterment and they have a pretty decent rate, although rates went down recently. So it's not as nice as it was, but it's okay. And also it's a little bit away from the rest of my money. Like even though Capital One pays something similar, like I like it to be, like I like that bar mitzvah to fill in money, you know what I mean? Like to be away so that it doesn't,
Out of sight, out of mind.
yeah, there's no temptation. Like it's just me sending out there's more friction. It's not that I can't access it. It's very liquid, but there's more friction. I have to go to another website. I have to transfer it. It's going to take 2 days, right? There's very little friction if I go to Capital One and I just in a button, just transfer from my high yield savings account into my checking account, right? So you got to know yourself also, right? You have to a little bit know yourself. So check there. Also Vanguard, I invest with Vanguard and they have a pretty good high yield savings account. Just do a little, kind of like search, but start with whoever you bank with and then see if you want to venture out to another one of these institutions. Yeah.
There's also Marcus.
Oh, Marcus, yes,
They're great.
Marcus is great also. And Marcus does have also lets you have the sub savings account and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Marcus.
Yeah.
Okay, there was a question about you were speaking about values and also at the same time investing all around, the SPF 500. And so what if it's like it feels funny. I'm investing in a company I completely disagree with what they stand for. Or how do
Great
you
question. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So great question. So here, first of all, we're not going to invest in individual companies. Second of all, the company, again, if you have very, very strong feelings, and I respect that, I happen to be a person that is a little bit more detached from these things. But if you're like, you feel very, very strongly that you need your funds to be environmentally friendly or, be only funds of select companies that do certain things that to you feel very important, right? That they don't pollute. Like, again, the thing that's coming to mind is the environment, but there could be other things, right? Then there are funds to be found like that. They might cost a little more because, again, it just takes basically, it gets a little technical, but basically when they create these funds, it means that there is an active manager who all the time is trading inside the fund to try to make it a fund that outperforms the stock market overall, so that you can say to investors that even though the stock market traditionally yields about 8 to 10%, this year they did 12 or they did 15. Having somebody actively manage those funds costs you more. That's why we typically don't recommend it. However, if you're a person who really cares about these things, it's important to honor yourself and then look for those things. If you're a little bit more detached like me and say, you know what, this is just because I have to do it, then you go for an index fund that is low cost, that covers the entire stock market. And yes, sometimes there's going to be companies there that don't do necessarily things that I necessarily would personally do, right? Or teach my children to do. But I personally don't even like it. It's just such a small percentage of everything that, you know what I mean? But I do respect if it's something very important to you, then yes, there are funds that you have access to that you can look into and do it that way.
There was a question here. It's more of a comment, but investment seems very scary. Also, I don't know how it works with taxes. So on the one hand, where can they find out more about investment? I guess that's your website. To make it a little
Wait,
less scary.
what was the first part that they said?
Investment seems very scary. And
Mm.
also, I don't know how it works with taxes.
Okay, so here's what I will say to that person. Download the Mindful Spending Plan so that you can get in my list, and I'll send something on. I have a really detailed class on investing. And I'll make sure for this group to give you something like special, like I'll do some sort of discount or something, because I know it's a big topic and I don't want people not to at least start learning the fundamentals so they can lose the fear. Because a lot of the fear is just not knowing the language and not understanding it. It's a very broad topic, and I recognize and I get that it's scary, because it can be scary, but I promise you, after you hear me talk about it and break it down, and after you hear it several times, you're going to be like, oh, actually, I get what's going on here. Okay. And in terms of taxes, so it depends on what type of account you invest. Then you sometimes have tax benefits, sometimes not. I'll tell you something very general that will help everyone. Okay. And this is to clarify terminology, because very often we get the terms confused. Okay. Think of it in layers. You have a brokerage house, which is an investment house. That's the company where you're going to invest. That could be Vanguard. That could be Fidelity. That could be Schwab. Any of these names maybe sound familiar. Right? Excuse me. Any of these companies. Okay. So now within that company, there's different types of accounts. Those are the buckets. Those are the vessels. Okay. There's taxable brokerage account, which means the money you put in there, you can sell it and at any time you have access to it, right? But you don't get any tax benefit for having that money there. There's retirement specific accounts, which are the ones that give you tax deference where you don't have to pay taxes on the earnings on that until later when you take out the money. There's also, they deduct your contributions are deducted for from your taxes. So there's all these sort of benefits. So these are the types of accounts. Regardless of whichever account, and there's a whole list, and I teach it in my courses, okay? Regardless of all the fancy names of the accounts, and you have to become a little bit familiar with them. In the account, then is the investment. And that's where you choose what to invest in. And that's where we say, oh, we're going to invest. Typically, we recommend to invest in low cost index funds or low cost exchange traded funds. And typically we try to choose those funds that invest in a broad variety of assets or companies. That might be the S&P 500. It might be all the stock market. It might be like a big pool of companies. Okay. Sometimes it could be bond funds if you're a little bit later in life. Like I said, bonds are also important because they kind of give you fixed income. They give you like certain payments all the time and they're not as risky. But just to understand, there's an investment house. There's the type of account, which could be a regular investment account, or it could be a retirement specific account. Okay. Those are the IRAs, the Roth IRAs, the SEP IRAs, those kind of accounts, the 401ks. Okay. And then within those accounts is the investment itself. Does that make sense?
I love this. I'm very excited for everyone to learn more about it. Okay, there was a question. You have one?
I see here about non-fixed income owning businesses. So I think that's what I
think you answered that
I
one.
answered that, right? You choose a percentage that you're paying yourself, and then from there you take MISR and you allocate and you choose a percentage that it stays in the business. Okay, good.
Yeah. So one of the next questions was that her understanding was that you said to first pay off credit card debt before investing. So every time you said the word investment during your talk, for that person, it should come in as pay off your credit card debt. And so that was correct.
So the only caveat to that is typically, yes, I would like you to pay off your credit card debt before you focus too much on investing. However, this is really important. I'm glad you asked the question. If you work for a company where they already offer you a retirement account, employer-sponsored retirement account, like a 401k or a 403b, take them up on it, invest in it, have them take from your paycheck and have that happening. Don't delay that happening while you're paying your debt. If you're in a different situation and you think you have enough discipline to tackle the debt quickly, and the commitment to do so, then maybe don't invest yet and tackle the debt. That it's a little controversial because again, time is important, but sometimes it's hard to do both at the same time. And sometimes the incentive to tackle the debt, part of the incentive, aside from, I think MISR is a bigger incentive, but part of the incentive is like, oh, I actually want to have more money to invest. So you could do hybrid. You could be paying down debt and also investing at the same time, a little bit of a hybrid approach. But do know that once you pay off all those credit cards, that's free money that now you can use to fund your opportunity fund, your joy fund, and your investment fund, bucket, not fund, whatever. Okay. So that should be kind of the way to think about it.
Beautiful. I love that. And I think one thing I love that you just said was that it's that free money that now you take. And I love this concept of like pay yourself first. And
right.
At this point, your pay yourself first is going to paying off your credit card debt. And that same money, once it's done, it can go to,
exactly.
The investments and which also
exactly.
I think it wasn't asked in the question, but I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about this concept of automation.
Yeah.
How
Thank you
to,
for asking it.
Yeah.
The more we can automate these things, guys, and this is going to be easier for those of you who are on a regular salary. Those of us who are, either not consistently drawing the same amount from our companies. If you're drawing the same amount from your company consistently, then this is easier. If you're getting the same amount from an employer, this is easier. If you're not, then you have to rely a little bit on willpower. But for the most part, I want people as much as they can to not have to rely on their willpower and try to automate things as much as possible. Meaning to say, the same way that an employer-sponsored retirement plan automatically leaves your account, right? I want you to set yourself up that $100 or $500 or whatever the amount is, you can always change it later, leaves the account automatically and goes into whatever leaves your checking account and goes into whatever the type of account that you want it to go is. It depends on your goals, right? So if it's your shorter term savings, then do it, make sure it goes. If it's your investment account or which of your investment accounts, then the more you can automate it and set it up that it leaves the account without you having to think, oh, but then I'm so tempted because there was a sale on something else. So then, you rationalize not doing it. So if it can happen without you having to use your willpower, it's so much better because it's going to happen no matter what. And I want you guys to also think about like a toothpaste tube. How many times has it happened that you're running low on toothpaste and you go to the grocery store and you totally forgot to replenish and you're like, oh shoot, I'm not going back till like for another 5 days or whatever, right? And somehow there's still toothpaste coming out. I don't know how it happens, right? But you get to squeeze it. So I want you to think a little bit like that. Like if we set it up that we pay, just like we pay Miser first, we pay ourselves those goals, whatever those you may have defined them to be, first or second to Miser, then they're getting done. And then you get used to working within whatever's left in the tube of toothpaste. Obviously, those of you, like I said, who are younger, who have less pulls on your income, right? That's going to be easier for I recognize that for many of us that is harder, but at least have that visual in mind that it would help if we can always get used to living with less and making the money work for us again. But it can't be from a place of fear, you guys. It has to be from a place of love, of service, of values. You know what I'm saying? Not from panic or obsession or anything like that.
Yes, I love that. That's a great mindset. Another question is, how do you know which category a mutual fund is in?
Oh, what you mean? What does it invest in? Like what kind of investments a fund is? So it'll typically tell you if it's a tech fund, if it's a high growth fund, usually it has a lot of tech companies. So it typically will tell you kind of what kind of companies the fund is investing in. Sometimes it's a industry fund, so it invests it invests in telecommunications company or whatever. Oh, if it has fees or not. So all of them have fees. So that's what she's asking, if they have fees or not. All of them have fees. What you're looking for is a fee called expense ratio. Typically, you want to find out what is the expense ratio of this fund. And so to give you an example, a Vanguard total market fund, I looked this up last night because I was having this conversation. I believe VTI is the total market, is 0.03%. That's all you pay. Okay. That's all you pay on your money. Whereas you might have another fund that is total market, but it's run a little bit differently because it's actively managed. It gets a little technical. You might be looking at 0.5, 0.7, even 1%. So these things seem like trivial because like, who cares? It's 1%. But if I showed you the math, money really, like that's a lot of money over the life of your investments. That really should be yours. It should not be paid to somebody else. So whatever, the point is, look for something called expense ratio and try to, again, most ETFs and most index funds have pretty low expense ratios, and you can find those at Vanguard. You can find them on Betterment. You can find them on Fidelity, Schwab. Just look at the section where it's exchange traded funds or index funds instead of mutual funds. I guess that's the way to maybe help you there. But I think maybe a bit of a deeper dive into investing will clear it up.
Amazing. Okay.
It should be under 1%. We want to keep it on for sure under 1%. Like I said, you can be invested in the total market for 0.03%, right? Or in the S&P for 0.08%. So that's a big difference. Okay. So
Right.
definitely as way below 1%.
Love that. Okay. That gives a lot of clarity and how to find it. So thank you so much for that. There was an
Oh,
anonymous, yeah,
mhm.
there's an
No,
anonymous question. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, go for it, go for it.
No, I see that somebody's asking about when your employer is matching. Okay, this is very
Mm,
important. When you have an employer who's offering you a retirement plan, very often they will match whatever you invest up to a certain percent. That means that if you invest up to 5%, let's say, to give you an example, okay, up to 5% of your income, if they have a 1-to-1 match, okay, they will give you another 5%, like like free money. They will literally match what you put in for free. So that's free money that now is going to grow for you. Sometimes the match is not 1-to-1. It's whatever. It just depends what the benefit plan your HR department has set out for you. But whatever the case may be, if they have a matching plan, you for sure want to take it. Regardless of what, it doesn't matter if you're in debt, I don't care. You take it because it's free money that now is going to be growing for you. Okay. So you want to invest up to the amount, at the very least, you want to invest up to the amount that they will then give you the match. You want to make sure that you hit that amount so that they match you and you get that free money. So you push yourself. Don't say, oh, whatever, I don't want to invest so much because I really need the cash. No, if you need to be putting in their 5% or 7% or whatever to get them to give you free money, and sometimes it's half of what you put, but it doesn't matter. It's still a significant amount of money over the time that you're working for the company. Do it. It's really helpful.
love that. Okay. There was an anonymous question. I always thought that tuition is part of MISER. What if you can't afford to pay 10% after paying tuition? How does this all work? And where
Okay.
does a RUV come in?
Okay, so a RAV comes in right now. A RAV comes in always. It's really very important to try to start having somebody that you can ask these questions. Tuition is not necessarily blanket statement, something that we can pay out of MISER, especially not boys' tuition. I mean, again, you have to talk to a RAV and they have to understand your personal financial situation at any given point in time. And that's why it's important to have these conversations at like you're going to evolve, okay? But it's important to have the conversation. Now, again, I'm saying typically, but I'm saying it with the very strong disclaimer that you have to call a RAV with your particular situation. Typically, boys' tuition is not something that we can deduct from MISER. Girls' tuition is different. Typically, though, some expenses that have to do with yeshiva bachurim, for example, yeshiva tuition might not be deductible from MISER, but a bachur, and again, consult with your Rav. But the typical answer that I've gotten for myself and for students is that if a yeshiva bachur is in yeshiva, that means he learns from 7:30 at night till 10 o'clock at night. He typically doesn't have a way to support himself. So what you give him so that he can buy himself sandwiches, so that he can go to the grocery store, he can go to the dry cleaner, clean his suit, buy toothpaste, blah, 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 you can actually expense that from MISER. So that's why asking these questions is so important. The Rav is always going to want to help you. Halacha, we know this from anything that we ask in halacha. Okay, think about Taharas Mishpacha, right? Halacha is always there to help you. Don't make assumptions. Don't stay in the dark. Look for the answer to your particular financial situation. Often, we're in such a situation that there are more expenses that can be deducted. Very often, by the way, we can take 100% of the MISER and use it for ourselves because of the situation that we're in. Again, those are very extreme cases, but they are halachically correct. Okay, and in those cases, the Chachamim say at least separate it before you take it for yourself, right? Do the act of setting it aside, elevating all the money that God gave you by recognizing that that is to be given to someone in need. And yes, if you are the one in need, you can take it, but don't take that as me giving you permission to you deciding that you have a need. Talk to the Rav, see what exactly the need is. And there might be things that you can deduct. Maybe you can deduct girls' education. That I've seen happen. Okay. Boys, I haven't seen so much, but again, these are very important questions that everybody should start asking.
Yes, Rabbanim are wonderful, kind people. It's one of the things I work towards to help people call Rabbanim because they're great.
Good. Yeah.
Another thing to keep in mind that sometimes a Rav says to delay paying the Meiser because you're the one that needs it, but then pay it later. So it's a very specific person to person, situation to situation answer. So
right.
Okay, do you have a Meiser money account? Interesting. Do you have the Meiser money gained from interest and savings? Okay, now I get it.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. My understanding is that typically we don't do it. That's what I've heard several rabbis do. Say, and I can't remember the exact reason why. I think it was something because the money moves so fast. I can't remember. Don't quote me on this really. But I do remember, again, this one really don't quote me, but what I do recall is no, we typically do not pay, take Meiser on the interest earned. Again, that's for just regular savings. Having said that, if you have an investment, okay, and you liquidate that investment, say you 20 years ago, you put money in a taxable brokerage account, right? And you bought whatever stocks or whatever assets, it doesn't matter. Okay. And now you want to liquidate, you want to sell a portion of that from the earnings. Now you're going to take Meiser. Anytime that you liquidate money that now it comes to you, okay, you're going to take Meiser, just like you're going to pay taxes on that money. You're also going to take Meiser. But typically for the interest rate that we earn on a typical savings account, my understanding is that we don't.
Beautiful. Okay, there was a clarification. So first pay off credit card debt before anything else, correct? And I think you answered that. That was correct.
Ruth is asking, does it apply to investment retirement when you come of age? When you come of retirement age and you start pulling money, making withdrawals to live off of that money, when you start withdrawing money, yes, you will pay Meiser on that money because this is now your income. Now it's coming to you, just like you're going to pay taxes on it. Unless there's some of the accounts that you're not going to, like the Roth IRA, you won't pay taxes on, but the IRA or the 401k, regardless, now it's your income. It has never been tithed because you separated that money before. It was never tithed. Now you tithe it. Same thing, by the way, and I asked this question, Social Security. I had a student who asked me this question. She was starting to receive Social Security. And the Rav said, yeah, you would think you don't have to tithe it because this is my money that I just gave the government all these years, right? But the reality is that money was never tithed. Now you're getting it back from the government. Now you have to tithe it. Now you have to pay Meiser on it.
How is freelance different than a small business owner, or is it the same?
With regards to how I explain the way the way I think of or recommend allocating the kind of the money, it's the same thing. I mean, think about it like if you freelance and you're getting paid, one client pays you 5,000, another 1,000, right? So make yourself a spreadsheet. I have one. Eventually you can ask me for it, email me or whatever. It's not free, that one though, but I have one that my students use, where I give all these splits, and then it becomes very easy because all they have to do is put the revenue and it does the calculations for you. And then you just know, oh, I have to transfer this much to this amount. Like, again, with these things, you can't automate them as the salaried employee can, because you don't know the exact amount. So that in your money dates, in your business money dates, you'll make the appropriate transfers, but the spreadsheet gives it to you. But what was the original question she was asking? Oh, she was asking if it's the same. Yeah, so it's typically the same because you're getting paid it's variable. It's variable. So you have to kind of split it yourself.
Beautiful. And there was a question if we can have the slides after because they're great.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I could share the slides, of course.
Amazing. Thank you. And one question which I'm always asked is where can we learn more?
Oh,
Where, if we have more, what can we do next?
thank you. So the best way to learn more, I would say, tune into the podcast. It's on every Monday and every Friday. On Fridays, I answer questions. So listeners can always email me or DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn, and then I'll take your question and I'll answer it on the show. Usually it can be anonymous or it could be just a first name. So don't worry, there's no full names being said. And that's very helpful. So that's a great resource because it's again just listening to these things and you start becoming familiar with the lingo and with the way of thinking about it, because I those were the two things that we said. We have a way of thinking about it that is a little bit what's the word, it's not necessarily
Misaligned.
ours, right? And we also
Mhm.
are lacking the financial literacy component. So when you listen to the show, you're gaining on those levels. So I would say that's the best way. You can always follow me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, but I would say the podcast is just a great way to just being in that conversation. And of course you can email me questions. I'll answer them on the show or whatever. And now you download the mindful spending plan with the code Chassidus, you'll get it for free. So you'll able to receive my newsletter. My newsletters, I'm not saying this braggingly, but I'm just saying like people love them and I invest a lot of effort. Michal, do you get them? They're really good emails.
Yes,
You should.
I
They're
love them.
right. I have so much fun writing them, and people like literally always respond. Like every day, I get tons of emails back because they're very enjoyable. So getting the newsletter if you want to, it's an enjoyable read every week, and I'm pretty regular with these. And I cover all sorts of topics, and I usually try to relate something to the holiday or whatever is going on. So yeah, that's always a good place to learn as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. There's one other question about the spreadsheet. What is the spreadsheet called when we look
Oh,
for it
oh,
for
see,
your
yeah,
own
yeah.
business?
Oh, yeah, Chaya. So you're talking about the revenue allocation spreadsheet. You actually have it, Chaya, because it's part of From Purpose to Profit. You actually already invested in it. It's part of your program.
That's great. Okay, so I'm putting that. Oh, whoops, I sent it to you, but I'm putting that there. Okay. Thank you so much, Al. You're
Thank you.
incredible.
You guys were amazing. And please be in touch. I'm really very accessible. Like you can email me, Yael at Yael Trusch, anytime. If you have questions, I'm very accessible. I'll answer them on the show and I'll send you a link. Sometimes I even answer you straight in the email. It just depends how complicated the question is or whatever, or how pressed for time. But I really am. I'm a DM away on LinkedIn or Instagram, an email away. And I'm happy to just continue. And I always like hearing from people because it lets me know what do people need more of, and that gives me the ideas for new episodes or new workshops or new classes. So stay in touch, because if you have the question, it means other people have the question. So let's help each other out by having the conversation.
It's incredible. And also the entering this topic without fear, with the knowledge that Hashem is here. We have to do our part. We make the keli, but Hashem's the one that fills it. It just makes it so much sweeter and so much more enjoyable.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining. And as is Hashem, we should have more great conversations. Thank you so much, Yael.
Amazing. Thank you guys. Take care. Happy Purim.
You too. You too. Happy Purim.